Hi guys, and welcome to the Gone To series. In this series of video tutorials, we'll talk about Spring Framework in detail. We will talk about what exactly Spring offers and the reason why it's so popular among developers and organizations around the globe. Spring Framework is a free and open source Java application framework which was created by computer expert Rod Johnson in 2003. And the main aim for creating such a framework was to enhance the developers' productivity and make them understand and use some of the best industry coding practices. Rod Johnson created the framework using a simple design pattern, inversion of control, or the dependency injection. And later on, the Spring team went on adding new features to the framework as a separate modules or project in it, in the form of separate jar or set of jars. In the end of this introductory video, we'll take a look at what other advanced features Spring people provide which are built on top of the Spring framework. For example, Spring Web Services, Spring Batch, etc. etc. Alright, let's start with a complete overview of Spring framework, which will create a strong foundation for all Spring concepts and hands-on that you are going to go through in the upcoming series of Spring tutorials. The first module in the Spring framework is Inversion of Control Container or the Dependency Injection Engine. This is the core module in the Spring framework. What it says is you should not be creating or instantiating an object inside another Java class, but rely on this module for creating the object for you, which you can use anywhere in the Java project or classes you want. For example, here we are creating an object of class B inside class A, which means class A is dependent on class B. In future, if a developer is going to modify class B for some requirement purposes, let's say he modifies the number of parameters he uses for the constructor of class B, he may need to modify class A as well. And if any developer writes a better version of class B which provides more functionality with the name C, and the project team decides to replace class B with the new class C, then you will need to modify class A as well. For this, you will need to modify class A wherever you are creating object B with an object C. I've just talked about the problems using a simple example, but believe me, in any big projects having thousands of Java classes or more, if you have to make changes in hundreds of other classes because you just made a small change in one class, it's a real big pain. All these problems are just for one reason, that class A is dependent on class B. So if we can completely remove or at least reduce this dependency of class A on class B, we can overcome all such problems. And here comes Spring's dependency injection or inversion of control containers importance. This module will help you in overcoming all such problems using a simple configuration file in a very simple way. This was just a brief and a fast overview of Spring's inversion of control container. I will dedicate a separate tutorial on what exactly is dependency injection, problems if you do not use it, its real benefits, and most importantly, how it made Spring framework the most popular framework till today. The second module in the Spring framework is aspect-oriented programming. Aspect-oriented programming is just another concept as we have OOPS in the programming world. What it says is, if there is a certain thing you are using in a project which is not part of the main business logic, for example logging, transaction management, etc., then why including all such things as part of your main business logic? For example, in this function, our main functionality or business logic is adding two numbers, that is A plus B. Then what these things are doing in the same function? Here, what we are doing is we are mixing both functional implementations, that is adding two numbers A plus B, and non-functional implementation, that is all these logging statements, at the same place. which in future may lead to a greater difficulty in managing your Java project. This Spring module provides you with a simple mechanism of how you can implement all such non-functional or non-business things as a separate entity, just like you have a separate class for a separate responsibility in your project, such that you won't see any such statements in your business functions. So it's like you would be able to see logs in the log file or console, but you do not need to write log statements within your functions. Isn't it great? Your functions would only contain business logic and nothing else. And it's not just logging, there are many similar things that you mix heavily with your business functions in your project. For example, caching, transaction management, etc. I've just given a brief overview of what this module does for you. Later, we'll see every concept related to aspect-oriented programming and what Spring offers related to that, and problems if you do not use it, or what goes wrong if you mix such non-functional implementations with functional implementation with hands-on sessions. The third module is Data Access Integration. This module has 5 sub-modules in it. If you're using Spring JDBC, then you are so relaxed when it comes to Java database interactions. While performing any database operation, you will not need to write a single statement for opening and closing of database connections. You do not need to write any exception handling code. Prepare statements and execute statements would be handled by Spring itself. You do not need to manage result sets at all because you get the collection object of your choice having desired object or objects from the database itself. For some reasons, if you do not want to use Spring JDBC or plain JDBC, this ORM module provides you with a full API support to integrate third-party ORM tools like Hibernate, iBatis, JPA, etc. with Spring Framework. OXM module provides you with a full API support to use other third-party OXM frameworks within Spring Framework, for example Jaxb, Castor, etc. JMS module contains all features for producing and consuming messages from JMS queues. If you're using Spring Transaction module, you really are into safe hands because of its well-defined and easier ways for managing all simple and complex transactions in your Java application. The fourth module in the Spring Framework is Web MVC Framework. Using this, you can build a complete web application using MVC design pattern in a very simple ways. And the last Spring module is Test Framework. It provides you with a complete support for testing Spring components with JUnit or TestNG frameworks with a lot of ease. This was the complete overview of what Spring Framework is. I'm sorry if I was a bit faster, but I'm going to cover every single concept in detail with hands-on sessions in the upcoming tutorials in this series. Using Spring Framework, you can build a complete Java application, be it a web or a non-web application. But Spring provides a list of advanced features which it calls as Spring projects as separate jar or set of jars. Here is the complete list of what Spring offers in total apart from the regular Spring framework. You may visit this link to have more information on all of these advanced features. In the next tutorial, we'll see the concept of dependency injection in detail.